In a small village nestled between ancient hills and thick forests, there lived a man unlike any other. He was not a king, nor a scholar, nor a man of wealth. He was a simple soul, humble in appearance, dressed in worn-out clothes and often barefoot. Yet his presence carried the weight of wisdom and serenity. The villagers called him Baba Hayat. They believed he spoke little, but when he did, his words could calm storms inside hearts. He lived alone on the edge of the jungle, in a small mud house surrounded by wildflowers and silence. But Baba Hayat was never truly alone. With him lived a creature that once terrified the village, a full-grown leopard, fierce in appearance with eyes like molten gold and a body carved by nature itself. The leopard had once been the terror of the region. Spotted at night, stealing livestock, its roar enough to send shivers down spines. Hunters tried and failed to trap it. Many feared it, cursed it, and spoke of it in hushed tones. But then, one day, something changed. The leopard appeared at Baba Hayat's doorstep, limping and wounded. Most would have run, but the old man, with no weapon in hand, simply looked into the beast's eyes and said, "Come, you've wandered long enough." And the leopard came. From that day onward, the two became inseparable. Man and beast, soul and shadow. People watched in awe and fear. The leopard no longer hunted livestock. It never harmed a soul. It followed Baba Hayat wherever he went, to the fields, to the forest, to the riverbanks. At dawn, they could be seen walking together through the mist, the man with a wooden staff, the leopard at his side like a loyal disciple. Children whispered stories. Elders debated them. Some claimed the leopard had been tamed by jinns, others said it was Baba's prayers. A few silently began to believe that love, pure, unconditional, was more powerful than any chain. Many villagers began visiting Baba Hayat, not out of curiosity, but seeking peace. They came with burdens and left lighter. Rain came during the worst drought in decades. On the night Baba was seen praying under a tree, the leopard sitting still beside him. A lost boy was once found sleeping peacefully near the leopard, unharmed, after disappearing into the jungle for 2 days. These events weren't announced as miracles, yet people spoke of them with wide eyes and hushed reverence. The line between myth and truth blurred. The man and his leopard became a symbol, not of fear, but of harmony. People left food at the edge of Baba's home, not for him, but for the leopard. Some began to believe that the animal had a soul touched by God, or perhaps it was once human, returned in this form to complete a sacred bond. Whatever the truth, no one could deny the connection between them. It wasn't a relationship of dominance or command. Baba never gave orders, and the leopard never needed them. They moved as one, silent, graceful, with a language that had no words. On cold nights, villagers swore they heard soft humming coming from Baba's home, and sometimes the leopard's low growl followed it, like an answer. On festival days, Baba never joined the crowds, but the sound of distant flute from his corner of the jungle made even the most skeptical smile. No fences, no chains, only faith, only presence. People who feared the jungle began to walk a little closer. Those who doubted the power of compassion found themselves quietly reflecting on the story of the man and his leopard. Baba Hayat never sought fame. He never preached. He simply lived, close to nature, closer to God, and in doing so, tamed not just a wild animal, but perhaps a piece of the world's forgotten beauty. And in this quiet coexistence, in this silent companionship between man and beast, a bond had been forged, one that neither death nor time could easily break. A bond that would be tested, remembered, and one day bring the world to stillness. It was a morning like many before, the sky overcast, dew clinging to every leaf, and the soft rustle of the forest waking slowly. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the earth carried the scent of wet bark and flowers. But something was different. The door to Baba Hayat's small hut remained closed long after sunrise. The usual sight of the old man stepping out with his wooden staff, the leopard quietly pacing behind, did not come. Instead, the leopard sat motionless outside the door, its ears twitching, its golden eyes locked onto the wooden frame, sensing what no human yet knew. Inside, Baba Hayat lay still, wrapped in the same cotton shawl he always slept in. His face was peaceful, calm, as though caught mid-prayer. His hands were folded gently over his chest, a faint smile lingering on his lips. His soul had returned to its creator silently, without a whisper, in the middle of the night, just as he had lived, without drama, without demand. But it was the leopard who knew first. As dawn broke, it scratched lightly at the door, then let out a low, pained growl. When there was no response, it pushed its way inside. What followed was a sound no one in the village would ever forget. A deep, mournful howl that echoed through the trees, neither fully animal nor entirely worldly. The leopard circled the body, sniffing the man's hands, nudging his face with its head. It licked his forehead, whimpered, and then lay down beside him, refusing to move. When a few curious villagers came to check on the strange silence from Baba's hut, they found the scene frozen in time, the man unmoving, the leopard watchful and grieving. Word spread like fire. Men, women, and children gathered, tears already brimming in their eyes before they even entered the house. Some had known Baba as a healer, others as a guide. Many had only seen him from afar, walking with the leopard at his side. Yet now, all felt a weight in their chests, as if something ancient and sacred had quietly departed from the world. The village imam was called to prepare for the janazah. Men began washing the body with care and reverence, but the leopard would not leave. Every time someone tried to come near, it stood in the way, not snarling, not growling, but simply watching with unblinking eyes, as if asking for patience. A few villagers whispered in concern, wondering whether the animal would become violent. After all, it was still a predator by nature. But the imam, an old man with a trembling voice and a calm heart, stepped forward and raised his hand. "Do not fear it," he said. "This creature has known Baba's soul far more intimately than many of us. Let it mourn." Slowly, the villagers made space. The leopard sat once more beside Baba Hayat's wrapped body, sometimes nudging it gently, sometimes resting its head on the white cloth. The sight brought tears to even the most hardened eyes. One woman wept openly, saying, "How strange that an animal should cry for a man, while we struggle to cry for our own brothers." Another man whispered, "This is not just love. This is something divine." As the funeral time approached, preparations were made outside the hut. A patch of earth was cleared near the ancient fig tree Baba had once planted. Rows began to form. Men stood in silent lines, the imam taking his place at the front. But the leopard did not move. When the body was lifted and carried out, the leopard followed closely, not needing to be called. At the gravesite, when the body was laid down and the imam raised his hands to begin the prayer, the leopard sat just a few feet behind the last row. Not standing, not pacing, simply sitting, still and aware. Whispers ran through the crowd. Is it going to stay through the prayer? What if it charges? But no one moved. The imam looked toward the leopard and then at the sky. "This creature," he said softly, "has offered something few of us can. Unconditional loyalty. It did not come for reward. It did not leave in fear. It came to mourn. It came to say goodbye. And maybe, just maybe, it came to pray." And so, under the gray sky and soft drizzle, with silence heavy in the air, the villagers offered the funeral prayer. The leopard remained still through it all, unmoving, undistracted. And when the final Amin echoed through the trees, a soft breeze swept over the grave. The leopard let out one long, quiet exhale and lowered its head toward the ground, eyes closed as though offering its final farewell to the man who had once tamed not just its claws, but its very soul. The air was heavy, not just with the weight of grief, but with something unseen, a silence that clung to every breath, as if even nature was holding itself still. The villagers stood in rows, shoulder to shoulder, eyes lowered, hearts trembling. Before them lay Baba Hayat's body, wrapped in white, resting on the wooden bier beside the fig tree he had once planted with his own hands. The imam stood at the front, his voice quiet but steady, ready to begin the janazah. But it was not his voice that held everyone's attention. All eyes, every gaze, every soul, turned toward the leopard. From the edge of the gathering, it began to move, slowly, with a grace that belonged more to ceremony than to instinct. Its powerful form passed silently between the rows of men. No one dared stop it, no one even moved. Some watched with awe, others with silent tears streaming down their cheeks. There was no growl, no sign of threat, only a solemn, majestic presence. It reached the end of the last row, just a step behind the worshippers. Then, without command, without cue, it lowered its head and sat, facing the same direction as the others, toward the Shibla. A murmur ran through the crowd, soft gasps, stifled cries, hands pressed over mouths. One old man, his beard soaked with tears, whispered, "Subhanallah." For a moment it felt as if the earth itself had bowed with them. The imam, fighting his own emotion, lifted his hands and recited the opening takbir. The prayer began, and so did the miracle. The leopard, still as stone, remained unmoving throughout the janazah. When the men lowered their heads in silent prayer, the leopard, too, bowed its head ever so slightly, its body calm, its eyes closed. No one had taught it this. No one had trained it. What was seen was not a rehearsed act. It was something far deeper, an act born of love, of instinct, perhaps even divine recognition. It was not a beast obeying a master. It was a soul bidding farewell to another. Around them, the trees stood motionless. A soft breeze passed through the leaves, but not even the birds dared chirp. The only sound was the imam's voice, echoing through the stillness. Every Allahu Akbar was met with quiet sobs from the crowd, but none louder than the silence of the leopard, sitting beside them all, neither inside the human world nor outside it. Simply present, like a bridge between what is seen and what is felt. When the final words of the prayer were spoken, the imam remained still. His hands did not immediately drop to his sides. Instead, he turned to look at the leopard and softly shook his head in wonder. "We have read stories," he said, his voice trembling, "of animals that followed prophets, of birds that shaded saints. But today, we have seen with our own eyes that even the wildest of beasts recognize the saints of God. This is no ordinary animal. This is no ordinary farewell." The villagers did not respond with applause or cries. They stood in silence, humbled, changed. Some closed their eyes. Others stared at the ground. Children who once feared the leopard now looked at it as if it were something sacred. The burial began. Baba Hayat's body was lowered into the earth with gentle hands. Verses from the Quran were recited. The soil slowly returned to cover him. The leopard watched it all, unmoving, but when the last handful of dirt was laid and the grave smoothed out, it stood and approached. No one dared stop it. It walked slowly to the grave, circled it once, and then lay down beside it. Its body curled around the fresh mound of earth as if guarding it from the world. The sun had begun to break through the clouds now, casting soft golden light on the scene. The villagers watched as the leopard placed its head gently on the grave and closed its eyes. A few tried to call it back, fearing it would stay there too long. But the imam raised his hand again and said, "Let it be. It has found its place." And so, as the crowd slowly dispersed with hearts full and tears not yet dry, the leopard remained. No chains bound it, no fences enclosed it. Only memory, only devotion, only the final act of a bond too pure to name. And from that day forward, no one ever looked at the jungle the same way again, for they had seen something no words could explain. A creature of the wild praying not as a beast but as a companion in grief, as a witness to a life lived close to the divine. Seasons passed like whispers through the trees. The fig tree beside Baba Hayat's grave grew broader, its shade gentler, its fruit sweeter. Time, which so often erases stories and softens grief, did not touch the memory of what had happened that day. The leopard remained. Rain fell, sun rose, winds changed, but it never strayed far from the grave. Through storm and stillness it lay curled beside the resting place of its master, as if the earth itself had claimed their bond and would not let it break. Sometimes it walked slowly through the nearby trees, disappearing into the jungle, only to return before dusk, settling once more upon the soil that covered the one it loved. Villagers who once feared the animal now stepped softly around it, like visitors in a sacred place. Children who had heard the tale from their parents tiptoed near the grave, eyes wide with reverence. They brought flowers, not instructed to do so, but drawn by something deeper, something beyond logic. And curiously, no one ever had to clean the grave. Not a leaf rested upon it, not a weed grew unchecked. The area around it seemed always swept by unseen hands. Flowers bloomed there, wild and fragrant, even in seasons where none should. The leopard, still strong with age, would sometimes sniff the petals and lay down quietly, as though understanding they were gifts from hearts it had never met. Years turned into decades, and still the grave remained untouched by time. Travelers came from distant places, drawn by stories carried across valleys and rivers. Some came out of curiosity, others in search of blessings. Most left in silence, their hearts stirred in ways they couldn't explain. They did not come to see a leopard. They came to feel what Baba Hayat had left behind, not in words or books, but in the spirit that still seemed to live beneath the fig tree, in the soil, in the silence between heartbeats. The leopard became part of the story, but never the focus. People spoke of its loyalty, yes, but more often they spoke of the man who had inspired such love from a wild soul. They remembered how he had never raised his voice, how he had listened more than he spoke, how his presence had calmed even the most broken among them. Elders would gather under the stars and tell the tale again and again, how the beast of the jungle had bowed beside men in prayer, how it had not just guarded a grave, but honored a truth the world so often forgets, that love, in its purest form, needs no language, no laws, no explanation. Sometimes poets would come and write verses near the grave. Painters would sit quietly for hours, sketching the scene from a distance, their hands moved by something invisible. A soft trail formed from the village to the resting place, not paved, not marked, but worn by footsteps of those who came to reflect, to heal, to remember. And always in every telling the final image returned. A leopard, eyes half closed, resting in eternal vigil beside the dust that once held a man of God. The village changed with time, houses grew, roads appeared, generations shifted. But the story never faded. It was told in classrooms, whispered in prayers, written into books. Some debated its details. Others dismissed it as myth. But those who had seen it, or even stood near its truth, never questioned. They carried the story not in their minds, but in their hearts. And each time they faced hardship, each time they doubted the power of loyalty or love, they remembered that moment when heaven and earth had briefly touched in the shape of a prayer. And as the sun set each evening behind the hills, casting golden light through the fig tree's branches, one could still see the shape of the leopard. Older now, slower, but still watching, still waiting, still guarding. In the final breath of the story, in the stillness that follows all words, the truth becomes clear. Not in what the eyes saw, but in what the soul felt. Maybe it was not the leopard who prayed that day. Maybe it was something older than the jungle. purer than ritual, something not bound by species or speech. Maybe it was the soul of love itself, the spirit of loyalty, of nature, of silent understanding, that bowed quietly before a man who had lived not for power, not for praise, but simply for God.